Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Living Well with Janet, where we explore what it means to live well. I'm your host, Janet, a yogi, a meditator, plant forward eater, and all around wellness enthusiast. I'm also a second generation Asian American woman, an experimenter, and a deep thinker. Join me in my conversations and contemplations on the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and environmental aspects of living well. Before we get into today's episode, I want to share a little announcement reminder. I'm going to be traveling to Bali for the first time this September, and I would love if you could come with me. Maybe you've been wanting to visit Bali, but you haven't gotten around to it, or maybe you want to take a trip to somewhere in September, but you don't have time to plan it. This is a great opportunity to come on a week-long trip with myself and a group of 10 to 20 other beautiful souls. We're going to be visiting the Terta Empul Water Temple, a sacred monkey forest, doing a coffee brewing workshop. I'm going to try to squeeze in a yoga class for us. I'm getting excited just talking through some of the itinerary. If you're interested, I'll have a link to the trip details in the show notes, and you can also follow me on Instagram, where I'm going to be sharing updates as the trip approaches. Grab a friend, grab a sister, your mom, your cousin, a partner, make a group trip out of it. This is a great chance to travel without having to do any of the planning because I'm working with Trova Trip, who will take care of all of the logistics for us. Thank goodness. All we have to do is book our flights, and the rest is taken care of. If you've been listening for a while, you know that I'm a big believer that food is medicine. Growing up in a Chinese household, my mother often did, and she still does, tell me to eat certain foods to promote health based on Eastern philosophies on food. Once I went to college, I was more exposed to Western ways of thinking about healthy eating, which sometimes conflicted with what I was taught growing up. Through the years, I've experimented with vegetarian and vegan diets, and I now practice a pescetarian or Mediterranean way of eating, which I have found is the most accommodating for Western ideals of health while still being able to share meals with my Chinese family. I know that there are listeners out there who want to learn more about how to improve their nutrition for healthier living, and like me, crave a perspective that incorporates both Eastern and Western ways of thinking. So I have invited Zoey Gong onto the show. She is a New York and Shanghai-based registered dietitian, nutrition consultant, chef, and Chinese medicine food therapist. Welcome to the podcast, Zoey. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Janet. I'm so glad to be here.
I think the work that you do is so fascinating, and I'd love to hear you just talk about how your interest in food therapy first began. Did you go through training? What was all of that like?
Totally. It started around 13 years ago when I came to America. I grew up in Shanghai, and I left when I was around 16 to the United States for high school. And I still remember my first meal ever here. It was in the morning, and I was in the high school cafeteria. And I saw something, a kind of bread that was round and with the weird blue purplish color. So it turned out it was a blueberry bagel and with cream cheese. But I had no idea what it was. I just thought, this did not look like food. And so I wanted to try. I want to know what it would taste like. And I thought it was so delicious. Cheese and bread, and how can it go wrong? But I never had food like this. So then this is the moment when I changed my diet. I grew up with home-cooked meals, Chinese food, rice and fresh veggies and protein. And then it all changed into very processed foods. A lot of sugar, fats, a lot of meat, a lot of dairy. And just after a couple of months, I gained a lot of weight. I think that was not surprising. This happens to a lot of international people who come to the United States. And then for me, I guess my body was sensitive. So I started to have other problems. I had skin rash, and I had joint pain. And after a year, I also had 2 breast tumors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but luckily, they were benign tumors. Later, we found out. But I had to do surgery and everything. And that was the moment I felt like, okay, I really need to look into my health. Because I wasn't feeling well physically or mentally. And I was around 18, 17 at that moment. So I looked into food, and I just did my little research as a teenager girl, how to look prettier and feel better. And I found a lot of nutrition information online. And I started to follow some of it, and it was pretty much Western-based nutrition, and it led me to, eat more veggies, less dairy, less animal. So I followed a pretty strict vegan diet, and it helped me a lot, actually. In 3 weeks, my skin issue, the rash and everything was cleared. And I was able to manage my weight, and that was the moment when I was like, oh, food was so powerful. I had no idea about this. So I went into college. I went to NYU for nutrition. And when I was studying, it was very clinical, very Western medicine. And there were a lot of, I will say, my questions that didn't get answered during my studies. First was the study made me feel like Chinese food is not healthy. It made me feel like I couldn't eat my cultural foods anymore. And second was I was eating very healthy based on Western nutrition standards, but I had women's health issues that wasn't resolved by that. I couldn't be healthier in terms of, the diet I was having, I thought, but I was still having issues. And that was the moment when my mom took me to acupuncturist and gave me herbs to help with my period. And just with 3 months of that, and my years of women's health issues got resolved. And that was the moment I was like, oh, okay, Chinese medicine was also magical. It was so interesting. And, in college, I was also doing internships for food companies, so superfood companies, I would say. That was a very trendy concept back then. And I was doing research. And you know what I found? I found out a lot of them, the root of it was in Chinese medicine. I was like, okay, I was, looking into those superfoods, but they actually are foods from my culture that I don't even know about. And that's when I started to look into the books, those ancient recipe books, and I was almost mind blown. I thought the concepts were so advanced. They were talking about seasonal eating based on your own body, and they were mentioning so many amazing fruits and veggies that's traditionally in Chinese cuisine, but I have no idea about as a Chinese person. So I really wanted to know more. And then at the same time, I met somebody in my life, just a normal friend, who told me, oh, she just graduated Chinese medicine school. I was like, oh, you can study Chinese medicine here? And that's when I went to Chinese medicine school after I graduated from NYU. And also at the same time, I finished my dietetic internship at hospitals, and I became a dietitian, a registered dietitian, and I started to practice Eastern and Western medicine together. And that's how my career started.
That's so cool. So you really started with more of a clinical Western medical approach, and then the Chinese medicine came after. You said that the superfoods, some of those are rooted in Chinese food practices. What were some of the things? What are some examples?
So many. For example, kombucha, it was, invented in China. I had no idea. And let's say all these mushrooms, reishi or, lion's mane, and they were used in Chinese medicine for a very, very long time, thousands of years. And I thought it was, a pretty new thing. And there are so many other examples. Even, turmeric is also used in Indian medicine, Chinese medicine. Yeah, and I was just very surprised when I found out about that. And also very proud, and I wanted to know more.
So that's great. We saw a lot of similarities, but we also know that, with Western approaches to nutrition and Eastern approaches to nutrition also have a lot of differences. Are there examples from your work where you see it's almost like the opposite?
I think there are probably more similarities than opposites, but there are definitely a lot of differences in terms of, Eastern and Western nutrition. I think Western nutrition overall is very based on numbers. It's very quantitative. We use one set of number pretty much to define everybody. Right? You need, 2,000 calories, this amount of vitamin A, vitamin C. But in Chinese medicine or Eastern nutrition, we barely talk about numbers. We talk about more qualitative standards and more about more individualized treatments. That's the first difference. And the second, I think Eastern nutrition is definitely more holistic, which I guess is making sense for even doctors nowadays, because our body functions as one, right? As one big machine. You cannot even just look at one part and then just treat one part. You treat the whole system. And Eastern nutrition is really good at that. So let's say we want to treat a skin condition. In Western nutrition, you will say, oh, this food is good for the skin. This food has this nutrient that's good for the skin. But for Eastern medicine, it will look into, okay, why are you having these skin issues? Where is your imbalance? That's the root cause. And then we fix that. And then plus the foods that could be good for your skin, we add those together to treat certain problems. So that's the second difference. And the third difference that I think is very important, I think, is the joy of eating is very much emphasized in Eastern nutrition. You know, whenever, let's say, I was reading a textbook for food therapy or read those ancient medical books, it always emphasized that joy in eating or the look of the food should be good. You know, your patient should look at the food, it should be appetizing, and they should like the flavor. That's very important. But in Western nutrition, that never really appeared, you know, in a textbook. And I also think Eastern nutrition has more flexibility for people. When we practice clinical nutrition, there's a lot of guidelines. Okay, eat this. There are different diets. Let's say keto, right? High fat, no carb. But in Chinese medicine, it's generally more flexible. There's not really, you definitely cannot eat anything. Chinese medicine try to balance things out a little bit more. Yeah, so these are some of the differences.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about like the fad diets that tend to appear a lot in American culture. You know, we hear about like the Atkins diet, paleo, vegan, vegetarian. And you're saying within Chinese medicine food therapy, there isn't really, you think that it's completely opposite, or are there also kind of periods or trends that tend to be more popular?
Yeah, in Chinese, there's not really a trend. It has been a set thing, and I think it has been working. There isn't really, you know, a particular diet in Chinese medicine. I will say it like this: it has, I guess, 70% of what everybody should be eating is the same. Chinese medicine food therapy will teach you this. Okay, everybody's the same. It's definitely, you know, not gonna do any harm to you. It's good for you, help with your basic wellness. But then the other 30% is different from everyone, or let's say groups of people. So for example, we categorize everybody into roughly 9 constitutions. So if you find out what is your constitution, then you focus on the diet, you know, recommendation for that particular constitution. So give you an example. For example, I am a person who tend to be very cold and to wear a lot of clothes. I'm very thin, I'm very pale, you know, I always get sick. And for you, maybe you always get very heated. You're strong, you're very, you know, you love to exercise and you're generally healthy, but you tend to have a lot of heated symptoms. Then our diet, 70% similar. Okay, eat at the Rainbow, Whole Foods, I mean, that's definitely good for us. But the 30% on top of that, we should differ. I need more heating things, you know, more red meat, bone broth, and spices, and maybe curry, turmeric latte. But for you, you're going to choose the matcha latte. You're going to have, you can have more smoothies, you can have more salads, leafy greens. You see, that is the kind of diet that Eastern nutrition prescribes for people.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting you say like of the first like or the 70% that's kind of just like general for all body types. What are some things that you can share with our listeners that are really good, either like daily or monthly or like practices for your health based on Chinese medicine food therapy?
Sure. So when patients come to me, I always tell them these first, right? The basics. They need to have a good foundation. It's very simple. Honestly, you probably know of these, but first, I say you have to have at least 20 different kinds of fruits and vegetables a week.
20 is a lot.
When you really think about it, it's not. You know, it sounds like it's a lot, but when you start to keep track a little bit and you know, pay attention to adding more variety, it's actually very achievable. So I encourage you, if you want to get started, keep a little, very simple food diary. You know, we don't count calories or anything, but we do like to count the variety of things that you eat in a day. That's the first thing. And second is in terms of carbohydrates. A lot of people try to avoid it, but it's actually very important for your health, unless you have very specific, disease that prevents you from eating them. So whole grains is very important. Always 5 different kinds of whole grains a week.
5 different kinds. Could you give some suggestions? I'm just thinking of I know quinoa.
Yeah, quinoa is a great choice. Chinese millet or foxtail millet is fantastic. And also brown rice or purple rice, any kind of whole grain rice is great. And also you can choose a spelt or rye if you like, if you're not gluten-free. There's so many. I really encourage people to try these whole grains. You can add a legume to it as well. Let's say red lentil can be fantastic. And these grains actually is packed with protein and fiber as well. Fantastic for the body. Oats too. And then the last is to try to eat seasonally, try to eat locally. If you have a farmer's market, or just research what is actually growing in your region right now. It's actually highly important for you, first of all, to get the most available nutrients. Second is for your body to be more in tune with your environment right beside you. And that's going to make you feel better, actually. And science is not explaining why right now yet.
Right.
You think about it, right? The things that's growing in your region around you has qi too, and you have it, and you want to match it. And when your qi is flowing better, you just feel better, less tired and more creative, and maybe good things that starts happening.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Those are some great tips. I want to go back to focusing on that kind of 30% that's different for people. I know that you said everyone has a different body constitution, but how about based on does gender play a role? Are there certain practices or foods that are better for men and that are different for women?
Yeah, there are definitely some particular foods good for men and good for women because, men and women in Chinese medicine, right? Men has more yang and needs more yang energy, more qi, more stronger kind of energy. But for women, we need to nourish our yin, the blood, because we lose blood every month. And you heard of the sentence that a woman's made with water, so we need more efficient hydration for our body. So there are particular foods and herbs. Let's say for women, we would love to have more different kinds of mushrooms and different kinds of, let's say, angelica root that can help to balance our hormones better. But for men, they actually need, a little bit more protein and herbs that can help with the kidney to give them more yang qi so they can have more energy. So there is definitely a slight difference.
Yeah. That's great to know. I want to shift the conversation now to a specific topic that I've seen a lot in the health and wellness space, and that's the topic of inflammation. And I've seen that you kind of recently posted something about this. Can you explain why inflammation is so important to address, and what are some ways that we can reduce inflammation from a Chinese medicine food therapy perspective?
Totally. So the inflammation the world likes to talk about right now is usually a chronic inflammation. Our body generally have 2 types, right? One is very acute, a wound, and your body make it really red, and there's pus and everything. That's acute, and that's not what we are worrying about. We are worrying about the chronic inflammation that's silently bringing us a lot of side effects in our body, and that is happening because of mostly lifestyle choices. The food that you're eating, your stress is giving you this invisible inflammation that's in your body that's causing you long-term issues. And this inflammation does not happen just like this. You eat one burger, it starts. No, it's always created because of a long-term bad habit in your life. And a lot of us have this kind of bad habit nowadays, and so we have this kind of inflammation, and that's why we're interested in this. So in Chinese medicine, we don't have the concept of inflammation. I guess we have it, but we call it a different name. We generally call it dampness or phlegm. You can imagine your body, as like a greenhouse. You enter a greenhouse or a steam room. It's kind of humid and it's hot and you feel like sticky. And imagine there's also mold growing in this room. So you go in and you feel like all the mold and bad things are just stuck on your skin. And that is basically dampness in Chinese medicine. And if you don't want your body to be this kind of environment, you can think of in Chinese medicine, you can think of your body as this micro environment, and you want the environment to be like, I don't know, Hawaii maybe, sunshine, flowy, and everything growing, not too humid, not too dry, perfect. But when dampness happens, your body becomes this kind of steam room and muddy, humid place where a lot of disease or pathogens is very easily to get attached inside. And when it gets stuck, your qi and blood is not flowing, right? When things are not flowing, pain start to happen, tumors start to grow. So this is things that we don't want. And so in Chinese medicine, you hear maybe dampness reducing or removing stagnation, and that's, you can say it's equaling to reduce inflammation.
Yeah. You mentioned some like common habits that we have that will cause inflammation. What are some of the examples that you see most with like your clients or just that you've seen around?
Honestly, one of the top ones nowadays is definitely mental, the stress. I say it's very common and we don't pay too much attention about it because I guess Western science hasn't really studied it enough, right, to warn people about it or to understand what exact pathway could possibly is leading this to happen. Because it seems like it's impossible, right? Mental seems like something that's not physical, but all the symptoms are physical. But there's definitely a connection. So when your brain is stressed, it's giving out signals to different parts of your body that, okay, I'm stressed and you should be too. So a lot of things are not functioning well and then causes this kind of inflammation. And the second in terms of lifestyle is, food, the food that we're eating. We're eating so much processed foods nowadays that are very high in a lot of bad things and very little nutrients. So with long term of eating this type of food, it gives our body, dampness. And dampness in Chinese medicine is very easily created by fats and sugar. And that unfortunately is in the majority of the fast food is high in those two things. So that long term also causes inflammation.
So those are great things that I'm going to note to focus on is managing better or stress management and then trying to limit processed foods.
For sure. Honestly, less packaged foods if possible.
Less packaged foods.
Especially the majority of your meal, if it can be just veggies that you cook or you go to a trusted restaurant, that would be really, really the best option.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So, Zoe, on your Instagram, you share a lot about Chinese nutrition, but you also talk a lot about your Chinese culture. And I've seen, you feature your grandma and some of the lifestyle habits that she promotes for longevity and health. What is the most important thing that you've learned from her about maintaining longevity and health?
Yeah, so I asked my followers to ask her questions, and I did ask her those questions, and this was one of the questions. And she said just one word, happiness. So I guess, being happy is so important. And second, when I observe how she eats very simple. No supplements, none of the superfoods. Every day is home cooked. She never eat out. And she eats until she's like 70%, 75% full, never overeat. Very regular meal hours. Every day is the same. Yeah, and just home cooked foods, nothing fancy. And I think it makes a lot of sense because when you look at the Blue Zone videos or their information, these people, none of those population groups are having crazy supplements or very fancy things. They're all having a balanced, natural, and simple meal. And you will see all of them they are in a good mental state. So I think that is a very, very important part of it.
Yeah. You also share your experience in relation to your culture of having an American boyfriend and introducing him to your Chinese family and your culture. Have there been any health practices that were really hard for him to adopt or understand?
I think he is a very open person. So I think he's, really embracing everything that I showed him. And this is actually his first time outside of America. He had to get a passport for this trip, actually. And, he was very open to it. And he really, really loved China when he was there. Now that we're back, he's like, oh, when can we go back? I'm already missing the food, because just
Yeah.
by being there he felt healthier, and
Mm.
he had less, digestive upsets and things like that. And I think the practices are all seemed pretty natural to him, seemed pretty
Mm.
easy to adopt, especially when you're living there. The herbs or in teas and food is quite simple. One thing maybe he didn't like would be, I guess he still cannot stop his iced beverages. Because we don't like
Drinking the,
very,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
cold beverages, but that's something that he still have to drink.
Yeah, yeah, that's a hard habit to break. I mean, speaking of beverages, I know you're really well versed in food, but you also share a lot about tea on your platform. Can you share a little bit about the significance of tea in Chinese food therapy?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, tea is a huge part of Chinese culture. When I went back this time, I found so many really modern tea houses and selling really great quality tea. So in Chinese food therapy, tea is encouraged. It's just like, people love to drink tea for energy, it has caffeine in it. But there are many different type of tea. I would say I'm not a tea expert per se, but in general, there are so many different type of teas. But the big groups that say pu'er, white tea, red tea, black tea, green tea, right? So for example, if let's say we're going back, I'm the cold person. So in TCM therapy, I would be having more red tea or black tea
Mm.
or fermented or cooked pu'er tea. Those are warming teas to help me. And for you, you're a heated person, then you're gonna have more green tea. That's lighter, maybe a white tea
Mm.
that's lighter colored teas that has more of a cooling property for you. So there are different teas that you can choose. And I always support loose leaf tea, no tea
Mm.
bags, and really try to source good high quality teas, because there are a lot of great compounds in tea that can really help your body. So I'm definitely a tea drinker instead of coffee.
Ah, and you promote doing the loose leaf because when it comes in the packages, is it that it's more processed or what is kind of the thinking
They
behind
only
that?
put the scraps in the tea bags,
Oh, I see.
in general, when it comes to, and also the tea bag itself has glue. There's, there
Mm,
has to be a glue
additives
or
that
a
are
kind
bad.
of plastic to even seal the tea bag. It has to be there. So
Yeah.
why do you want to dissolve those in your hot water?
I see, I
The
see. Yeah,
highest
that makes a lot of
quality
sense.
tea is almost always in loose leaf tea form.
And you gave some great examples for how like drinking different types of tea work for different constitutions. So for you, if you're a cooler constitution, are you drinking tea like daily or how often? And like, do you drink it with meals? What's your kind of like practice?
I never drink tea on empty stomach. I don't like the too much caffeine on empty stomach. It kind of upsets me. So always after a meal is when I like to drink tea. And right now I'm drinking some pu'er tea, because I just have a lot of pu'er tea at home, and
Yeah.
mix it with some white tea.
Mm.
And I like to, add herbs to my tea as well. Because tea, right? I think in English language, tea, everything that's soaked in water, we kind of call it tea. Herbal teas or tea. But in Chinese medicine,
Right.
tea just means the green tea, the caffeine, the plant. I forgot the scientific name of it, but
Mm.
all these teas is the same plant, right? Tea leaf. That's called tea. So I love to add herbal things, for example, chrysanthemum, goji berries, or roses to my tea. Because I'm steeping it anyways, I might as well just adding some
Mm.
herbs to it to add some benefits and I drink them together. I think it tastes better.
Yeah. What are some of the health benefits of like the chrysanthemum and the goji berries?
Chrysanthemum and goji berry paired together is actually really great for liver and eyes. So if you stare at your laptop a lot or you stay up late, you love to drink, this is a great combo to add to your tea, or just drink, without a tea, just those chrysanthemum and goji berries. Goji berry, you look at the colors, it's really packed with vitamin A. So it's really great for the eyes, and you can eat it too. It's basically a antioxidant packed with antioxidants. So great for the skin, for anti-cancer, if you want to call it. It's really a superfood. And chrysanthemum, you can even use it externally. Let's say you did a tea and you have somewhere swollen, you can use the flower and then just put it on your skin to ease some discomfort of like swelling or heating sensation.
Oh, that's great. I'm gonna check out the goji berry and chrysanthemum combination. Zoe, I'm curious, what are some other like Chinese wellness practices that you do often?
Yeah, there are plenty, I feel, other than the food side or the herb side of things. I love to do weekly massage. I do it less here in New York because it's so expensive, but I try to do it on my own, let's say on my arms and legs, to physically remove stagnation from the meridians, or to stimulate my meridians for the qi and blood to flow better. Or in Western language, maybe you want to say to increase blood circulation, maybe. But it's actually more than that. But this is kind of the idea. But in China, I would do either back massage or breast massage or foot massage once a week, for sure. And it is truly helpful. I did an interview for my my aunt, and she's 70 years old. But her energy level and her entire vibe, I really thought she's 50, still. And it's really, and her life is not easy. She had a lot of emotional trauma and things like that, but she's still, be able to feel so young and energetic and healthy. And she never goes to the doctors and asks for her secret. And she says she goes to the massage therapist every week, twice a week, nonstop for years. She has been doing it for the past 5 years, and she's just swears by it. And she took me there, and it was very intense, but I can totally see the benefits if you can really do it long term. That's one thing. And another thing, I guess, is just a gua sha. I do a little bit on my face every day, not extensively, just about 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes.
5 minutes. Oh, okay. So all of these things that are like really simple for you to do at home by yourself. Like you said, like you could do self-administered massage, gua sha. It's all about getting like the circulation going in your body.
Yeah, and the gua sha really helps my face to look less puffy or look more vibrant. And I can really just see a pretty obvious change. So I keep doing it.
Do you focus mostly on the lower face, or is it like all over the face that you do?
Kind of all over. For me, it's really good.
Well, what are some kind of maybe more American type of wellness practices that you do or incorporate into your daily routines?
I do love to have a smoothie, but kind of modify it a little bit. I like to have the smoothie with a ton of different things inside, but no ice. So like a room temperature smoothie, because I really think raw foods definitely have its benefit. In Chinese medicine, if you go to a traditional doctor, they will say no raw foods, zero.
Right.
I don't think that's right. There's a lot of heat sensitive nutrients that's only available in raw things, and by blending it, it's actually making the hard fiber easier to digest. So for example, I wouldn't eat a kale salad, but I would be drinking a kale smoothie, and I would be adding less fruit, a lot of veggies, and some collagen. I think collagen is a great supplement if you want to take. Just banana is probably the only fruit, or papaya or mango. I just add one fruit for the sweetness, and probably 5 different kind of leaves or other veggies. And I add the things that taste horrible that I don't want to eat inside of a smoothie.
What are some of those things?
Yes. For example, a mushroom tincture. Lion's mane is kind of my go-to for the brain, because I use my brain a lot, and lion's mane helps with brain function. And I mean, I can eat lion's mane every day, but it gets boring. So sometimes I also love
Yeah,
the
yeah.
convenience of a tincture. And especially for mushroom, tincture can really extract mushroom very well. Sometimes better than a hot water extraction. So I would, and the thing is, mushroom tastes so horrible. A lot of them,
Yeah.
like reishi. Oh my God, yeah, I don't want to drink that.
It has very bitter, right? Yeah,
Sometimes I
yeah.
just put the tincture form and I blend it up and I drink.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. I prefer to drink my vegetables too, and I like the idea of like maintaining the fiber because I feel like that's half like the benefit versus kind of doing just regular juices.
Yeah, totally. Oh my, I just don't
Yeah.
like juice. I just, for my
Yeah.
palate, I don't like juice. So yeah, I'm a smoothie person. Yeah, and I like my smoothies. Another thing is, I guess, being active, right? It's pretty Western. In Chinese culture, people just started to exercise more. But I think in the West, we love to go to fitness classes, and I'm all for it. If you enjoy and you exercise, it's definitely a great thing.
That's great. Thank you for sharing those. My last question for you is I'm curious how you define living well. Like, what does it mean to you to live a good life?
I think there are two things. One is I need to be happy, and second is I need to make at least one other person happy.
I like that. Yeah.
That is my view on a good life. And on top of that, if I'm able to be more self-sufficient in terms of living, let's say be able to growing some things and making most of the things that I consume, that would be the most ideal. But I'm definitely not there yet.
We're all works in progress, so there's a lot of time to work on that.
Gosh, imagine can just grow everything that you eat and
Yeah.
I just start to make my own bread and it has been very satisfying.
Oh, wow, very cool.
Honestly, it saves me so much money too.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really fun.
I'm curious, like, I mean, if I wanted to find your bread recipe, is that going to be on your Instagram? Or where do you share kind of your content? Where can our listeners find you?
I'm still trying to figure out the best combo. I do want to add some Chinese medicine stuff in there, but I only make sourdough. So it can be a little tricky when you want to modify it because sometimes it might not rise properly. But I think sourdough recipe you can find. I recommend, start with making sourdough, just experiment with the recipes you can find. It's lovely because you have to feed the sourdough starter, and you let your bread is a lot slower. You have to wait for it to rise overnight. And it's somehow very fun. It's almost like you're keeping a pet or something.
Yeah.
But you get to eat it in the end.
Yeah. That's great. Where can our listeners find you online?
Yeah, so I'm primarily on Instagram, and my handle is Zoey Gong. And I also have my website. It's, zoeyxingyigong.com. And that's how you can find me.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Zoe.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Wasn't Zoe amazing? She is so fascinating, and all of the information she shared was super helpful. If you enjoyed this episode and you have a fascination with food therapy and nutrition, and you want to hear more content like this, drop a vegetable emoji, I guess, in the comments. And also, if there are certain topics that you want to hear me cover, please either leave a comment on this episode on Spotify, on the post on Instagram, or you can DM me on Instagram as well. Thanks again for listening. Before we close out today's episode, a reminder that if you're interested in coming to Bali with me this September, you can check out the trip details in the show notes. It'll be my first time and also my birthday gift to myself this year. So maybe if you are also a September birthday, we can celebrate together. Or if not, it's just a great opportunity to visit Bali and not have to do any of the planning. I am working with Chova Trip, who is taking care of all of the logistics for us. All we have to do is book our flight. You can find more details about the trip in the show notes, and you can also follow me on Instagram where I'll be giving updates as the trip approaches. Once again, this is your host, Janet. I can also be found on Asian Boss Girl, the podcast for the modern-day Asian American woman, with my good friends Helen and Mel, who are also hosting their own shows, which you can catch on the same feed, new episodes every Tuesday. You can follow ABG on Instagram at Asian Boss Girl and me, Janet, at Janet W. That's Janet, the word double, and the letter U.